Hey, Life Groups, welcome back. This week we are continuing in our hymns series where we're exploring stories and biblical truths behind some of the most meaningful songs in the Christian faith. And this week's hymn was Great is Thy Faithfulness. The words were written by a man named Thomas Chisholm, who described himself as just an old shoe. He wasn't famous, he wasn't influential, he struggled with poor health and spent most of his life working as an insurance agent. But at the age of 57, when many people feel like their best years are behind them, he sent a collection of poems to a publisher, and one of them became the hymn that millions of Christians now sing around the world. And it's a reminder that God doesn't need extraordinary people to proclaim his truth. He simply wants faithful ones. The hymn itself comes directly from Lamentations 3, and it is one of the most honest and raw passages in Scripture. The book of Lamentations was written by the prophet Jeremiah after the destruction of Jerusalem, and the first two chapters describe the devastation of the nation. But in chapter 3, the lament becomes deeply personal. Jeremiah describes feeling like God has turned against him. He says he feels surrounded by darkness, trapped, unheard, and overwhelmed by suffering. And I think that if we're honest with ourselves and honest with those around us, many of us have felt the same way. Maybe it's a diagnosis, or maybe it's a broken relationship, or perhaps it's grief or addiction or anxiety or loss, or you can fill in the gap. But there are seasons where the pain of life becomes deeply personal. And like Jeremiah, we might say that my hope from the Lord has perished. But in the middle of this book, right in the middle of these 5 chapters, something remarkable happens. Jeremiah says, "Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope." And then comes the words that inspired this wonderful hymn. It says, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his mercies never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." Jeremiah doesn't deny his grief. He doesn't pretend like everything is okay, but instead he chooses to remember. Right? There's a difference between remembering your pain and living in it. Remembering brings perspective, while living in your pain brings despair. And Jeremiah remembers that even in suffering, God's love hasn't stopped. His mercy hasn't run out. His faithfulness hasn't changed. And wherever God leaves life, he leaves hope. You see, faith and hope don't cancel out grief. They work alongside it. You can grieve but still trust God. You can hurt and still have hope. And Jeremiah ultimately reminds himself of this truth: the Lord is my portion, therefore I will hope in him. So the reminder for us today is, even when everything feels uncertain, our circumstances, our emotions, our future, we anchor our hope in the one thing that never changes, and that is God's faithfulness, which then gives us the ability to sing, "Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me." Enjoy your discussion today.